Thank you for sharing this time with me today. I want to talk to you about passport renewal and some rules that have been making their way through headlines. And my goal today isn't to create fear, it's to bring clarity. Hi, and thank you for trusting me to walk with you through these important updates. We're going to discuss what's happening with passport rules in 2026, what the 6-month validity rule really means, why airlines pay attention to your passport expiration dates, and how processing times are running right now in February. We'll also talk about when you should consider renewing your passport and what happens if you're planning international travel soon. And as always, this is not legal advice. I'm not a government official or an attorney. I'm simply here to help you understand information in a simple, calm, and supportive way so you don't feel lost or overwhelmed. Let me start by being very honest about something. The rules about passport validity haven't actually changed recently. What you might be seeing in headlines that use words like warning or banned or compliance, those headlines can sound urgent and frightening, but the truth is, these are long-standing travel requirements that have existed for many years. They haven't suddenly appeared in 2026. They're not new punishments. They're standard entry requirements that different countries have maintained to ensure smooth international travel. So if you're feeling panicked right now because you saw an alarming title, I want you to take a breath with me. You're not in trouble. Your travel plans are not automatically ruined. What's actually happening is much more straightforward than scary headlines suggest. Here's what the 6-month passport validity rule actually means. Many countries around the world require that your passport be valid for at least 6 months beyond either your date of entry into their country or your date of departure from their country. This is sometimes called the 6-month rule. Now, why do countries do this? It's not to make your life difficult. It's actually a protective measure designed to make sure you don't get stuck in a foreign country with an expired passport. Let's say you're planning a 2-week trip to Thailand and you arrive on March 1st. If Thailand requires 6 months of validity from your entry date, your passport needs to be valid until at least September 1st of that same year. Even though you're only staying 2 weeks, the country wants to make sure that if anything unexpected happens, if you get sick, if flights get cancelled, if you need to extend your stay for any reason, your passport won't expire while you're there. It's actually meant to protect travelers, not to punish them. Now, not every country follows this 6-month rule. Some countries follow a 3-month rule. Some countries only require that your passport be valid for the duration of your actual stay. For example, if you're a U.S. citizen traveling back to the United States, you can re-enter the country up until the very last day your passport is valid. The U.S. does not enforce a 6-month rule for its own citizens coming home. But when you're traveling internationally to other countries, those countries set their own rules. This is why it's so important to check the specific entry requirements for your destination country before you book your flights or make final travel plans. Let me explain where airlines fit into this picture, because this is where a lot of confusion happens. Airlines are not making up their own rules to be difficult. What's actually happening is that airlines are responsible for making sure passengers meet the entry requirements of the destination country. If an airline allows someone to board a plane and that person gets denied entry at their destination because their passport doesn't meet the country's validity requirements, the airline faces serious consequences. They have to pay for that passenger's return flight. They face hefty fines from the destination country. This can cost airlines thousands of dollars per incident, so airlines check your passport before you board, not because they want to create problems for you, but because they're legally required to verify that you meet the destination country's requirements. This means that even if you believe your passport is technically valid, if it doesn't meet the 6-month rule for the country you're visiting, the airline will likely deny you boarding. And I know that can sting. I know it feels personal when you're standing at the airport, ready to go on a trip you've been planning for months, and you're told you can't board. But the airline staff are following international requirements. They're not trying to ruin your vacation. They're protecting themselves from fines and protecting you from getting denied entry at your destination and being sent right back home. Here's what I want you to understand very clearly. If you have upcoming international travel plans, the most important thing you can do right now is check two things. First, check your passport expiration date. Not just to see if it's expired, but to see how many months of validity you have remaining. Second, check the entry requirements for the specific country you're visiting. The U.S. Department of State has a country information page on their website where you can look up the passport validity requirements for every country in the world. Some countries require 6 months from arrival. Some require 6 months from departure. Some require 3 months. Some only require validity for the duration of stay. Knowing the specific requirement for your destination is essential. Now let's talk about what's actually happening with passport processing in February 2026, because this is information you need if you're thinking about renewing your passport. According to the U.S. Department of State, routine passport processing currently takes 4 to 6 weeks. That's the time your application spends at a passport agency or center being reviewed and processed. But here's what that timeline doesn't include. It can take up to 2 weeks for your application to reach the passport agency after you mail it or submit it at an acceptance facility like a post office. Then, after your passport is printed and ready, it can take another 2 weeks for you to receive it in the mail. So when you add everything together, the total time from when you submit your application to when you're holding your new passport in your hands can be 8 to 10 weeks with routine service. If you need your passport faster, expedited service is available. With expedited service, the processing time at the passport agency is reduced to 2 to 3 weeks, and you pay an additional $60 on top of the standard passport fee of $130. But even with expedited service, you still need to account for mailing time on both ends. So realistically, you're looking at 6 to 7 weeks total for expedited processing when you include shipping. There's also an option to pay an additional fee of about $22 for 1 to 2 day delivery of your completed passport, which can help speed things up at the end of the process. For people who have urgent travel within the next 14 days, there are emergency passport services available at regional passport agencies. You need to make an appointment and you need to provide proof of your imminent travel, like airline tickets or hotel reservations. These appointments can be difficult to get, especially during busy travel seasons, and you may need to travel to the nearest regional agency, which might not be in your city. But if you have a genuine emergency, same day or within 72 hours, passport processing is possible in certain situations. I want to talk about online passport renewal because this is a relatively new option that's been expanding since it launched in 2024 and is continuing in 2026. If you're eligible, you can renew your passport online instead of mailing in an application. To qualify for online renewal, your current passport must have been valid for 10 years and must either be expiring within 1 year or have expired less than 5 years ago. You need to be age 25 or older. You cannot be changing any personal information like your name. You need to have at least 6 weeks before you plan to travel, because online renewal only offers routine service, not expedited. You must have a U.S. mailing address, and your current passport must not be damaged, mutilated, lost, or stolen. If you meet all those requirements, you can go to the official government website, which is opr.travel.state.gov, and complete your renewal there. Please be very careful about this. The only official place to renew your passport online is a website ending in .gov. There are many unofficial websites and third-party companies that claim they can renew your passport online, and they charge extra fees and put your personal information at risk. Always make sure you're on the official government website. Here's something really important I want you to know about timing. Many travel experts and the State Department itself recommend that you renew your passport when it has 12 to 18 months of validity remaining. Why so early? Because if you wait until you have less than 6 months left on your passport, you might already be restricted from traveling to countries that enforce the 6-month rule. Even if you're not planning any international trips right now, having a passport with plenty of validity gives you flexibility. If a last-minute opportunity comes up, if there's a family emergency abroad, if you decide to take advantage of a great travel deal, you won't be scrambling to renew your passport under time pressure. Processing times also vary throughout the year. The State Department has shared that they see higher demand for passports from late winter through summer, which makes sense because that's when many people are planning spring break trips, summer vacations, and holiday travel. If you apply during these busy seasons, processing may take longer than the estimates. The slowest season for passport applications is typically October through December, and that's when processing times tend to be fastest. If you have the flexibility to renew during the fall months, you might get your passport back more quickly than if you apply in March or June. Let me address something that creates a lot of anxiety. Some people worry that their passport will be canceled or taken away as soon as they submit a renewal application, and they're afraid they won't be able to travel while they're waiting. Here's the truth. When you submit a passport renewal application, your old passport does get invalidated. This means you cannot use it for international travel once you've submitted your renewal. So, if you have a trip planned and you might need to travel before your new passport arrives, do not submit your renewal application yet. Wait until after your trip. This is why timing matters so much. You need to plan your renewal around your travel schedule, not just submit it whenever and hope for the best. I know the waiting can feel endless when you're watching for your new passport to arrive. You check your mailbox. You refresh the tracking website. You hear different stories from friends about how long their renewals took. Some people receive their passports in less than the estimated time, while others wait the full duration or even longer. The processing time can vary based on which passport agency handles your application, how busy they are at that particular time, and whether your application is complete and error-free. If there's any mistake on your application, any missing document, any unclear photo, the passport agency will send you a request for additional information, and that can add several more weeks to your timeline. This is one reason why it's so important to be extremely careful and thorough when you're filling out your application and gathering your documents. Children's passports work a bit differently, and if you're a parent, this is important information. Children under 16 must apply for a passport in person. Both parents or legal guardians typically need to be present. Children's passports are only valid for 5 years instead of the 10 years that adult passports are valid. This means you need to check your children's passports more frequently. It's easy to renew your own passport and forget to check when your child's passport expires. Then suddenly you're planning a family trip and you realize your child's passport expired 2 years ago. So if you have children and you're thinking about international travel, check everyone's passport expiration dates at the same time. Now let's talk about what this means for different types of travelers, because I want to make sure you understand how these rules apply to your specific situation. If you're someone who travels internationally frequently for work or pleasure, you probably already know to keep an eye on your passport validity. But even experienced travelers can get caught off guard by the 6-month rule if they're traveling to a new country that enforces it more strictly than countries they visited before. If you're planning a cruise, this is especially important. Even if your cruise begins and ends in the United States and never technically requires you to enter another country's immigration, having a valid passport is still essential. If there's any emergency, if the ship needs to dock somewhere unexpected, if you need to leave the ship for medical reasons, if anything goes wrong, a passport allows you to re-enter the United States and proves your citizenship. Many cruise lines will not allow you to board without a valid passport, even for closed-loop cruises. If you're a student on an F1 visa or someone living in the United States on a different visa status, your passport requirements are even more important. Your passport needs to be valid not just for the 6-month rule when you travel internationally, but also because many visa processes and status adjustments require a valid passport. If your passport from your home country is expiring soon and you're living in the United States, you need to contact your home country's embassy or consulate to renew it. Don't wait until it's expired. Don't assume you can deal with it later. Keep your passport current because it affects more than just your ability to travel. It affects your legal status and your ability to remain in compliance with U.S. immigration requirements. For people who haven't traveled internationally in many years and are thinking about taking a trip now, I want you to check your passport right now if you have one. Not later, not tomorrow, right now. Look at the expiration date. If it expired more than 5 years ago, you cannot renew it by mail or online. You'll need to apply for a new passport in person using the same process as a first-time applicant. If it's been expired for less than 5 years and you meet the other eligibility requirements, you can renew by mail or online. But if you don't have a passport at all, you need to start the application process soon if you're thinking about international travel in the next few months. Let me talk about some situations that can feel really stressful. Let's say you booked a trip months ago, maybe even a year ago. You were so excited, you've been counting down the days. Then 2 weeks before your departure, you check your passport and realize it expires in 4 months, and the country you're visiting requires 6 months of validity. What do? First, don't panic, even though I know that's easier said than done. Contact the National Passport Information Center immediately. Their number is 1-877-487-2778. Explain your situation. Ask about emergency or urgent travel appointments at your nearest regional passport agency. You'll need to provide proof of your upcoming travel. Sometimes appointments are available, sometimes they're not. If you absolutely cannot get an emergency appointment and you cannot get your passport renewed in time, you may need to make some difficult decisions about postponing your trip or changing your destination to a country that doesn't require 6 months of validity. And I know how heartbreaking that can be. I know the financial loss. I know the emotional disappointment. This is exactly why I'm sharing this information with you now, so hopefully you can avoid being in that situation. Here's something else I want to mention. There are third-party passport expediting companies that advertise they can get your passport faster than if you apply on your own. These companies charge significant fees, often $150 to $500 or more on top of the government fees. They cannot actually make the government process your application any faster. What they can do is help you make sure your application is correct and complete, which reduces the chance of delays caused by errors. They can help you book appointments at passport agencies. They can pick up your passport for you once it's ready. Whether these services are worth the extra cost depends on your situation. If you're in a genuine emergency and time is critical, they might be helpful. If you just want to make sure everything is done correctly and you don't have time to manage the process yourself, they might be worth it. But if you have plenty of time and you're comfortable following instructions carefully, you can save that money and handle the application yourself. I want to be really clear about something that sometimes gets lost in all these rules and timelines. No one is trying to trap you or trick you with passport requirements. Countries establish these validity rules to protect international travelers and to make sure people don't end up stranded abroad. Airlines enforce these rules because they're legally required to and because they face serious penalties if they don't. The U.S. Department of State processes millions of passport applications every year, and they're working to keep up with demand. Processing delays aren't personal. They're not meant to inconvenience you. They're the reality of a system that handles an enormous volume of applications with careful security checks for each one. But here's what you have control over. You can check your passport expiration date today. You can look up the entry requirements for any country you're planning to visit. You can start your passport renewal process early instead of waiting until the last minute. You can double-check your application for errors before you submit it. You can factor in realistic processing times when you're booking international travel. These are all things within your power, and taking these steps can prevent so much stress and disappointment down the road. If you're sitting here right now and you realize your passport expires soon, or you don't have a passport at all and you need one, please don't feel ashamed or embarrassed. Life gets busy. Passports aren't something most people think about until they need them. You're not alone in this. Millions of Americans renew their passports every single year. The important thing is that now you have this information, and now you can take action. Go to the official State Department website at travel.state.gov. Read through the requirements for renewal or first-time application. Gather the documents you need. Take or upload a proper passport photo. Fill out the application carefully. Submit it with plenty of time before any planned travel. And then, yes, you wait. And waiting is hard, especially when you're excited about a trip or when you need your passport for something important. But the wait is part of the process, and your patience during this time is not wasted. For those of you who are wondering about specific countries and their requirements, I encourage you to visit the Department of State's country information page. You can search for any country in the world and see what their entry requirements are, including passport validity, visa requirements, and any other restrictions. This information comes directly from official sources and is updated regularly. It's much more reliable than asking your friend who went there 5 years ago or reading random posts on travel forums. Official sources give you the most current and accurate information. Some days when you're waiting for immigration documents, whether it's a passport or a visa or a green card or citizenship, some days feel hopeful and other days feel heavy. And that's completely human. Behind every passport application, there is a real person with real dreams and real plans. Maybe you're applying for a passport because you want to visit family you haven't seen in years. Maybe you're planning a honeymoon or a milestone anniversary trip. Maybe you're a recent citizen and this is your very first U.S. passport, and it represents a new chapter in your life. Maybe you need it for work, for education, for opportunities that will change your future. Your reasons matter, your story matters, and you deserve truthful, respectful information that helps you move forward. The truth about passport renewal rules in 2026 is this. The 6-month validity rule has existed for many years in many countries around the world. It hasn't changed recently. Airlines are required to check passport validity before boarding because they face penalties if they allow passengers to board without meeting entry requirements. Passport processing times in February 2026 are running at 4 to 6 weeks for routine service and 2 to 3 weeks for expedited service, plus additional mailing time on both ends. If you need your passport urgently and you have travel within 14 days, emergency appointments may be available at regional passport agencies. The best way to avoid stress is to renew your passport early when it still has 12 to 18 months of validity remaining, and to always check the specific entry requirements for the country you plan to visit before you book your travel. You're not banned from flights because of some new cruel rule. You're simply being held to entry requirements that have existed for a long time, and now you understand what those requirements are and how to meet them. Understanding is power. Awareness is not the same as fear. You can be informed without being panicked. You can take action without feeling overwhelmed. And if you ever face a complicated situation with your passport or your travel documents, getting professional help from an immigration attorney or a trusted legal advisor can bring you reassurance and clarity. Stay informed, stay truthful with yourself about timelines and requirements, stay patient with the process, even when it feels slow. If today's update helped you feel more informed or more calm instead of more worried, I'm truly glad. That's exactly what I hope to accomplish. If you'd like to receive more daily updates about U.S. immigration, passports, visas, citizenship, and travel in this same calm and truthful way, you're welcome to stay connected here. I'll continue sharing information that helps you navigate these systems with less fear and more understanding. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I appreciate your trust and your presence. Take care of yourself. Take care of your travel documents. Check your passport today if you haven't already, and please stay hopeful.